Okay, hear me out. You know how we have pupils, right? And the function of our pupils is to allow the light into our eyeballs to, like, you know, do its thing and create an image of what we're seeing. So flies have weird eyes, right? And they see things differently. They see like millions of things, not millions of things, but they have a bunch of eyes and they see things differently than we do. Goats, have you ever seen a goat's eyes? They're like horizontal. Cats, this way, but rounded. So we know that flies see things differently, right? They can see like all the way around. Birds, have you ever seen that like Men in Black movie with the bird? I forget what it's called. It's that kid movie. It's like a pigeon. And they can see like their butt when they're looking forward. How do we know that our perception of reality is really what things look like? Like, okay, here's a bottle of Cetaphil moisturizer. How do I know that this isn't actually like a different shape than what I think it is and what I perceive it to be? This could be the shape of a box. Doesn't feel like it, but I mean, that's just the way I perceive it. That's a mind F. Hey everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today, we're gonna be talking about something that is very unsettling to me. Aliens. If you don't know me, aliens are my worst fear. Not my worst. My worst fear, I think, is falling. But aliens is a close second. It started when I was little. The movie Signs just traumatized me. And now I am horrified of aliens. By the way, if you're wondering what products I'm going to be using, you can check the description box and I'll list everything that I'm using. Aliens. Buckle up, everyone. Also, I'm going to be making aliens like a very prominent theme in this channel, I think, because even though I'm horrified of aliens, I'm also very interested and intrigued about aliens and the idea of like another life form. So I will I will be having like part 2, part 3, part 4, lots of parts, because there's so much shit about aliens. I could sit here all day, but I don't have time for that, so we'll be breaking it down into parts. But today, we're gonna be talking about the first abduction to hit mainstream media and blow up the way that it did. So their names are Betty and Barney Hill, and this story takes place in 1961. Betty and Barney Hill are an interracial couple. I'm here for it. I myself am an interracial couple, and it's just beautiful. In 1961, that was kind of like, interracial couple, ew, you're weird. But they loved each other and they said, you know what? I love you, let's be together. Anyways, they were from Portsmouth, New Hampshire. They've been married for 16 years at this point, and they decided to live life on the edge and go for a road trip. They never had a honeymoon when they got married, so they kind of looked at this trip as a makeup honeymoon that they never had. It was a very last minute decision for them to go on this honeymoon. So they kind of just left. They had less than $70 in their pocket, which back then was not a lot of money, but a good amount. So they both had been working long, stressful hours at their jobs, which is part of the reason that they decided to do this. They knew that they deserved a little break from reality. Betty worked as a social worker. She dealt with child welfare cases for the state, which is such an amazing job. I personally could never do that, but for anyone that does that in the world, props to you, because you have got to be strong and have a huge heart to do that. I have a huge heart, but I would go home and just cry all the time if I did that for a living. So for the people who do that and are strong enough to do that, go you. That is amazing. That's my view on that. And Barney worked third shift at the post office. And the post office was 60 miles from their house. So he drove to work for an overnight shift, 60 miles, and then 60 miles back in the morning when he was finished. I mean, can you say tired? Any time that they had that they weren't working, they spent serving their church and taking part in the civil rights movement. I like this couple. So this is why they decided to go, because they were working long hours and they were just tired. They needed a break. So they decided to drive through Montreal and Niagara Falls, and this trip was a 3-day trip. On the last night of their road trip, they had stopped at a coffee shop to fuel up on coffee and be able to get through the night because they had set out at 10 p.m. There was a hurricane on the way, so they really wanted to hustle and get home as soon as they could to beat the hazardous weather. They were expecting to arrive back at their house at around 2 or 3 in the morning. That didn't happen, and I'll tell you why. Here's where you really need to put your seatbelt on if you haven't already. So Betty and Barney are now on the open road, and they notice something strange in the sky. Ooh. It was a light, a very strange light. A bright white light that also had some like red and other colors in there as well. They said that they thought it was a falling star at first, which, what the heck is a falling star? I've heard of shooting stars. What is a falling star? Like an asteroid? Comet? What is a falling star? But anyways, they soon realized that that was not the case. Nope. They started to get really nervous and they wanted to like pick up the pace and hurry up and get home. So they kind of started gunning it. Barney loved to watch planes in his free time, and he was also a World War II vet. So he was kind of familiar with like sky happenings, and he assured Betty that he thought it was probably just a satellite that fell out of its orbit. But he knew deep down that that probably wasn't the case. But being the good husband that he is, he just told Betty that to kind of try and calm her down. They were driving through a mountain, so the roads were really windy, and with every twist and turn that they took, it seemed like this light was just following them. They thought that it was an illusion because that's how much this light was moving. It was like it was playing a game of cat and mouse with them. They ended up just chalking it up to the car's movement. You know how like when you look outside of your window and you see the moon, it kind of looks like the moon is moving with your car, but it's not. It's just so far away and like depth perception, you know what I mean? That's kind of what they thought might be going on with this light. So this continued for a little while, and they decided to let their curiosity get the best of them. So they pulled off the side of the road at like a lookout and got out of the car. They just so happened to have binoculars with them, so they took them with them and they observed this thing in the sky. Betty was the first to look, and she said that it definitely looked like an object spinning in the air. She said, "Barney, honey, if you think this is a satellite, you must be nuts," because that was no satellite. She knew he was trying to play her, but all because of love and because he just wants her to feel safe. And they remind me of me and my husband so much, because we could be like, for instance, say we're on a hike and I see a bear. My husband will be like, "Babe, it's okay, it's just a mouse." And I'll be like, that's clearly a bear. But he will swear it's a mouse just to make me feel safer. If he sees I'm scared, he will tell me whatever I need to hear to feel better, because that's what a good man does. Take notes, fellas. But anyways, though, Barney knew that Betty was right. It definitely was not something that could be logically explained. Something was going on here. Barney had an IQ of 140, so he's like really smart. That's a high IQ if you don't know. 140, bravo, Barney, bravo. So they get back in the car and they decide to set out again. Their curiosity was piqued, but there's nothing they can do about it. So they get back in the car and start to drive again. They want to get home. The hurricane's coming in. They're like, we need to get home. I'm scared. That'd be me. The light just kept in pursuit though. After about 70 miles from the diner that they began at, it was hovering just over the trees. So it literally looked like it was right there. This was like 100 feet above them. So pretty close. I would be so freaked out. I would probably be crying. My thing is too, like, why them? Why was this light just following them? Were there no other cars on the road? I don't know how like heavily roads were traveled back in 1961, but I would assume that like other people were driving around. How did no one else see this light that was 100 feet above them? It was right there. There were no cars that passed them. There was no one else at the lookout. If it were me, personally, I would be pulling my butt over, getting out of the car and waving someone down and be like, hello, do you see this? Am I the only one? Am I going crazy? Because there is a light up there. Somebody, please make me feel like I'm not crazy. I would be waving down the cars because I don't play when it comes to aliens. So Barney gets fed up and he slams on his brakes and he is just over it. He's like, what are you? We're gonna find out. So he takes the gun that he has underneath his seat, puts it in his pocket, and he gets out of the car, leaves it running, leaves his wife in the car, and goes out into a dark field off the side of the road. Why? Have they never seen a horror movie? Why? That's the first rule when you see something scary, you don't pursue it. Just run. Why are you pursuing it, Barney? But I digress. He pursues it. Don't ask me why. So he goes out to this field, and what he sees is really something. He sees a UFO. He sees a spaceship. It's lined with rows of windows, and in those windows, he can see gray beings standing on the other side looking back at him. Whew, gross. Betty drew this image to try and show what this looked like to them. Guys, am I crazy? Or would you have a heart attack and die right there? Because I would. They wouldn't be able to take me because I would just die on the spot. Die. Gone. So Barney tries to reach for his gun, but for some reason, he can't. He can't bring himself to do it. He hears a voice telling him not to put his binoculars down. I don't know what prevalence this has, but I guess just because he can hear of something like in his head telling him, hey, don't put your binoculars down, bucko. You better hold on tight. I would be losing my mind. My heart would literally just stop beating. It would beat very fast and then it would just explode. And there would be no more Samantha. Bye-bye. It was nice to know you. So Barney runs back to his car, screaming, me, if I'm not dead already, and gets in the car and speeds off. Betty is the lookout. She kind of keeps her eye on it, and it's still following them. It ain't giving up that easy. It was tracking them. Soon after they took off, it was like right down the road, they started hearing this weird beeping noise, and it sounded like it was coming from the trunk of their car. Then they became very tired and groggy and passed out. The next thing they remember is waking up 2 hours later and 35 miles from where they last remembered being. Back at their house in Portsmouth, they tried to piece together what had happened, and they literally just could not remember anything before they heard the beeping. But they knew that something happened to them. They knew that they had an up close and personal encounter with whatever it was that they saw. So Betty reported this to the Air Force because she thought that they could have been exposed to radiation or something. She also reported it to something called NICAP, which is the National Investigations Committee on Aerial Phenomena. Over the next few years, Betty and Barney experienced a lot of negative side effects from going through this event. Betty had recurring nightmares. Barney developed an ulcer and experienced like just general anxiety all the time. So they decided to seek professional help. They ended up going to a hypnotherapist, which was a popular form of therapy back in the 60s. So they went to someone named Dr. Benjamin Simon, and he met with them over the course of about 6 months. And he was able to kind of piece together through their hypnosis sessions what he thinks they believe happened. Barney was hypnotized first, and during his sessions, this is what kind of was able to be drawn from his recollection. He drove his car away from the UFO after confronting it in the field and had an overwhelming urge to pull off the side of the road. He ended up pulling off on a dirt road, and there he saw 6 men standing in the middle of this road, kind of like just waiting for him. Then his car stalled. Horror movie, can you say? 3 of the men ended up approaching Barney's car. They told Barney not to be scared, but easier said than done, dudes. The leader of these beings was there as well, and he told Barney to close his eyes. While Barney was under hypnosis, he said a lot of weird things about eyeballs. He would say, I felt like the eyes had pushed into my eyes, or oh, those eyes, they're in my brain. Lord help him. No thanks. Barney said he was told to close his eyes because there were 2 eyes coming directly near his eyes. 2 big old eyes coming right up in his face, about to touch his eyes. So he was told to close his eyes. He said, all I see are eyes. I'm not even scared that they're not connected to a body. Hold up, what? They ain't connected to a body? Horrific. He said that him and Betty were taken to a disc-shaped spaceship, and then they were separated. They were both taken to exam rooms, him being taken by 3 of these men that had grayish skin, bluish lips, and they were very small. Once they were in the exam room, he was told to sit on a small metal table. He remembers this table being so short that his legs hung off the side, so I feel like that's a pretty good indication of how small these little aliens are. Although he kept his eyes closed throughout this examination, he can still recall kind of what happened, just not what he saw. More what he felt. He felt a cup-like device being placed over his lower region where it sucked out a semen specimen. Ew. He made sure though that everyone knows that he did not have an orgasm, okay? That's important. He did not have an orgasm. This thing just sucked so hard, it got some semen out. The men then scraped his skin and put it on a clear plastic film looking thing. They also looked into his ears and his mouth. They inserted a small tube in his booty and then they took it out quickly, but that happened too. Poor Barney. He said that he also felt someone feeling his vertebrae, and it seemed to be that they were counting his vertebrae. They were feeling his spine. Not his vertebrae. They were counting his vertebrae while feeling his spine. Barney said that he overheard them speaking in a language that sounded a lot like mumbling, and he didn't understand this language, obviously. But while they were speaking this language, he could also hear them speaking in English, but their mouths weren't moving. Barney said that he thought that this was thought interference, which is telepathy, but that term wasn't like widely used back then, but that's what it was. They were telepathically communicating with Barney. After the examination, Barney recalled being let out of the room and taken back to his car. He was in a daze and he saw the ship then take off. Betty's account is more detailed because she didn't have her eyes closed, but their stories kind of line up pretty well. So this is what Betty remembers happening. Betty recalls a UFO landing on their car and then them falling asleep. She recalls being able to remember that they took her out of the car and carried her onto the spaceship. Once they were inside the spaceship, again, she said that they were separated and both taken to examination rooms. The examination room was a oval-shaped room, like a dome, and there was a large light hanging in the middle of the ceiling. Pretty descriptive. You go, Betty. She laid on a metal table and she was examined. She remembers having her clothing taken off, her hair was plucked, her skin was scraped. All of these were collected on the thin film-like plastic that Barney described. They took nail clippings. They inserted needles that were connected to wires into their arms, their legs, and they probed them. And their spines, too. Betty also recalled being stuck right in the belly button with a 5-inch needle. She assumed this to have been a pregnancy test, and she remembers it being extremely painful. She said that what she referred to as the leader watched all of this happen from the side of the room. After Betty's examination was over, the beings rushed back into her room, acting very excited. She kind of overheard them through the telepathy, saying that they were excited to discover that Barney's teeth were able to be removed. And Betty remembers laughing about this and trying to explain to them that Barney had dentures and that humans, when they age, their teeth deteriorate, so his teeth were dentures. But the beings had a difficult time understanding this concept because it was probably foreign to them. Who knows? They probably didn't even have teeth. Later, Betty also had some time alone with the leader, and she asked them where they had flown from. The being pulled a map out of a hole in the wall, and this map was holographic. He then asked Betty, "Can you locate the Earth on this map?" She said no, she could not, and she admitted that she knows nothing about the universe. And the being laughed and basically told her that if she doesn't even know where she is on the map, there's no point in telling her where he's from on the map. Later on in a hypnosis session, Betty was actually able to draw what she remembered of this map. Now, she did say that she's not a good artist, she's not good at drawing, but this is what she came up with. She said that when she saw this map, it was so large that it was like looking out a window. She said that the stars in this map that were connected by dotted lines were told to her by the leader to be less traveled stars. The stars that are the largest ones were the main like home stars, and then the stars with the heavy like solid lines on them are trade routes. Routes, how do you pronounce that? Betty's niece, Kathleen, claimed that Betty actually had a photographic memory. So she thought that this map was pretty accurate, but again, Betty said that she wasn't really good at drawing, and it's really difficult to draw a 3D image from memory on a 2D surface. You know what I mean? Like, that's hard to do. Some people think that the beings made her have a photographic memory. Later down the line, a woman named Marjorie Fish came up with a theory that the map that she drew is actually a map of a star system called Zeta Reticuli. This is called the ZR theory. The ZR theory became a staple in like UFO and abductee phenomena scientific investigation done by MUFON, which is the Mutual UFO Network. Most people didn't agree with this theory after some time, after kind of picking it apart, but because Betty had a photographic memory, they believed that this map should be 100% accurate, apparently. But Betty already admitted that she wasn't very good at drawing, so give her some slack. Betty and Barney weren't the first people to have been abducted, but their story was one of the first to hit the mainline media and blow up the way it did. It was the talk of the town. Most of the other abduction stories depicted friendly creatures. So NICAP, which I mentioned earlier, the UFO people organization, they interviewed Betty and Barney and found that their story was credible. They think that Betty and Barney were being honest and telling a true story. The Air Force, remember I told you that she also reported this to the Air Force, they kind of shrugged this off and ended up telling them that they believed that they just saw Jupiter in the sky. I didn't know that Jupiter came down from the universe and hovered just over the trees, but okay, Air Force, whatever you say. The couple's psychiatrist, Dr. Simon, said that he didn't think that they made anything up, per se. What he thinks happened is he thinks that Betty was suffering from nightmares. Hold on, because I can't talk. He thinks that Betty dreamt this in a nightmare and that Barney kind of just absorbed this in his brain as the truth. So he doesn't think they lied, but he also kind of thinks that they're, I guess, kind of crazy. Oh, son of a biscuit. The Hills, though, stuck by their story until the day they died. Betty even claims to have been visited on more than one occasion since the first experience that they had. She also became very involved in the UFO research community. This really affected her, and she wanted to find out the truth. I mean, I would do the same thing. If you think that you discovered something, you're gonna do whatever you can to, like, find out if it's real or not and prove it, you know? So that's what she set out to do. Barney ended up passing away in 1969, and Betty went on to live until 2004. So she lived a pretty long life without her lover, and she believed her own story up until her very last breath. I believe them. You can't just come up with that kind of stuff. And she didn't suffer from any, like, mental illnesses before this happened. So it's hard to believe that she would just kind of come up with something like that, you know? I believe it. I really do, and I believe in aliens. I believe that there's so much more to life than we can even comprehend. Do you guys think that aliens are real? Do you think that Betty was telling the truth? Do you think that Barney is just a crazy old bat? I hope that was interesting for you guys, as interesting for you as it is for me. Aliens and abduction stories and sightings are just so interesting to me, and I definitely plan on doing more. If you have any interesting stories that you know of that you would like to hear about, leave it in the comments down below. Let me know. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. I'm just editing that out. That was stupid. Keep it together, Samantha. You're doing fine.